Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Michigan Advocate. I am your host, Joanna Whaley. We're so glad that you are here. Every week, before we get into the headlines, let me do this because I really wanted to jump in right there. But before we get the show, because it's my show and I started this podcast, if you would like to support the work that I'm doing on this podcast and the work that I do in general, right now it is running for office. You can go to joannawhaley.com and /donate and you can support our campaign there. Amazing things are happening right now all across the state of Michigan. But we've got to talk about the absolute dumpster fire that is the Trump administration. Yes, I am someone who's running for state office, but what is happening in DC and abroad is affecting all of us. Right now, if you're listening to this show when it comes out, we're literally about 48 hours out of the fact that Donald Trump, without the approval of Congress, decided that he was just going to kidnap Nicolas Maduro. He was an absolute terrible human being. He is, Maduro. Not a great guy, not defending the guy. But our president, yes, the president of the United States going full Nazi Germany and just deciding that he wants to just do whatever the hell he wants. And here we are. Here we are. Now, I've been talking to people who are across the world. I have people who are involved in political work across the entire globe, and they have been telling me that this is just the nail in the coffin of the end of the United States respect. They are saying that the U.S. is completely losing all respect across the world because nobody can trust what this president says. Nobody can trust what we are doing as a country anymore. I mean, look at what has happened across all policy. And we have politicians from DC all the way down to Lansing, all the way to our city halls who are just mimicking the crap that they are hearing in DC. They just think that they can skirt the law. And that's where we are right now in this country. Today, I got to attend a protest in Detroit to say no more. No to this, to say no dictators anymore. And all across the country, many people were engaged in that. And I just think we got to keep speaking up. We can never give up. And that's why I'm really excited for you all to meet my guests today. I told you all at the new year that I was going to be bringing on a lot of guests onto the show in 2026. And our first guest today is Deanne Austin. Deanne is somebody that I met. I want to say we met at the Great Lakes Political Academy. We met at a couple things here and there. I'm going to make sure that she has unmuted herself because if we've learned anything from the Zoom era is that we have to make sure we do that. But we met a couple times, and she is someone who's thinking about running for the state house. So Deanne, welcome to the Michigan Advocate. We're so glad to have you. How are you?
Thank you, Joanne, for having me. I'm doing good. I'm good. I've reached that point of the weird shift between like Christmas break and going back to work. Like, what day is this? I know a lot of people are going back tomorrow. I still have a week, but I'm just like in a weird but excited mood. Like, I'm glad for the new year. I got some big things happening this year, so I'm excited.
Yeah, I had a hard time because, I've been in campaign mode, and campaign mode is like all out. It's like every part of your day and your schedule and your life. And I remember for Christmas, I took Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off, and it was really hard to have a work day the next day. It was really hard to get back into it. So I feel you. Really excited to kind of get into a lot of things. So Deanne, you are in that awkward stage right now. And all of us in politics have been there. What we call the kitchen cabinet phase, right? I talked about it a lot here on my podcast. Tell us about why you are thinking about running for the Michigan House of Representatives.
Oh, that's a good question. I often tell my friends around me, I was the last person to convince to run. Like, I always knew I was going to when I graduated from Michigan State in 2009. It was
I'll
like at the
forgive
height
you
of
for
the
that.
housing recession, and my mom had lost her house, my childhood home,
Mm,
and I'm like, I was thinking of going back to grad school to get a master's in social justice. So I thought I was going to be, like former President Barack Obama and be a civil rights attorney. And so it didn't work
mm.
out. And so I went into education. I was a blue factory worker. I've had like such a storied past. And I think now is the time. And I say I'm running for that 8-year-old girl who, like, my mom was a single mom who lacked certain basic needs. And we are living in the times now where it's okay to take a rest, but it's time to fight. I always
Yeah,
feel a lot of people say, a lot of us aren't angry enough. And I believe in being angry, but it's how we channel that anger. And
right.
so a lot of people want to step up, and it's just my time to step up. It's time to fight, right? I will not go. I can go on about the hundred of issues that I want to help fight
And
for,
we'll
but
get to those. Yeah, we'll get to
right,
those.
right. But that's just my why. Like, I'm doing it because the time is now. Like, I had to
Mm.
believe in my heart that it's time to run, and I truly believe that.
Yeah, I understand you with the anger part, right? I would say that we have entered into an era in politics in this country where you kind of have to have an anger to run. Like there has to be a glimpse of something that just gets you off of the couch to say, "Hell no." Like I'm not going to stand for that. And I think that that's a huge thing that's happening right now, especially with, folks in our generation who kind of have watched people a generation before us lead. And some have done great, but then some have just made some decisions that just make us like, boil. But you're right, like that idea of taking the anger and doing something with it. It's one thing to be angry and scrolling and doom scrolling and getting pissed off, but it's another thing to actually get up and say like, you know what? I'm gonna go change this, and I think that that's awesome. I mean, your background, your story, like thinking that you're gonna be the next Barack Obama, like who wouldn't want to be Barack, right? Like who wouldn't want to be Michelle? Michelle hashtag Michelle 2028. But there's a lot of I think what we saw in Obama was someone who led with authority and led with clarity of that social justice. And I think that, I can hear that from you. So, as you're walking through, I was looking through, we were talking before the show started about some of the communities that you maybe eventually helping represent. And as you were listing some of these communities, immediately my mind went to say, oh my gosh, there's so many communities within those cities that need people who are going to fight for them because there's so many people inside of those communities who are targets of the government. Tell us a little bit about some of those communities that you have thought about, that you have your eye on, making sure that you're going to bat for them, when you run, and when you win.
Yes. Well, I always say I was born a black woman, so that already I was born into being part of a marginalized community.
Mm.
My mother was a single mom, so I grew up with a lot of women in my family. So I've always been fighting for what I consider the average, everyday, hardworking families trying to make ends meet. I also, again, as a teacher, I'm always looking for fighting for students, fighting for, people who can't advocate for themselves, whether, again, that could be different marginalized communities. It could be the LGBTQ plus community. It could be the seniors, the senior community. Communities who might not have much or who might can't fight for themselves. I am a non-driver. There's a population of those who don't drive either by choice, or they can't drive maybe due to a disability. So I am a marginalized person, and so I'm always thinking of ways to advocate for those again who are marginalized in underserved communities.
Yeah, you said something really key. And I think it's something we really need in our political world and in our public leadership right now. I think we need more people in marginalized communities leading, because this dehumanizing policy doesn't show up when the marginalized people are in power and when they are in the seats of government. And you know, you said something, you said you were born a Black woman, you were born into a marginalized community. I have such a opposite experience where I was born into a very like, you know, I was born into white malehood and then left it. And so you know, I think about the experiences that you had to go through in life that I missed for 34 years, right? Yeah, and your experience of marginalization is very different from mine. Like I think that that's one thing also that we do really bad job of in public leadership is we just paint such broad strokes, right? But I always, anytime I meet someone like you, who's, you know, like you understand that you were born into that, like I always come into it. It humbles me to say, like, you know, I lived 34 years without really knowing what that meant. And now that I'm on the other side of things and really feeling the weight of some things, like, you know, I look up to someone like you who tells me, yeah, like I know the struggles when I was a kid, you know? And so, yeah, that's awesome. So talking about teachers, our dear friends in the Republican House, the Republican House members, have recently cut $645 million from the state budget. Or yeah, 645 million. I mean, they've cut money all over the place, and now they want to come after schools again. They want to cut more school funding coming up. What do you think about that? What do you think about your students?
I mean, that is just horrifying, right? I mean, I'm somebody who works in policy, so I'm a former educator, but I just left education a year ago, and to go through this summer watching a budget not even be passed, watching, some students go hungry. I know what that feels like. I know what it's like to come to school, and we all say we want our students to come to school and learn, but when you are serving marginalized students, you know that that's educating them is just one piece. There's so many different factors. They're coming to school, they can't concentrate. Some of them are
Right.
homeless, so they're couch surfing. Their families are, unstable when it comes to living. And some of them, I can hear their stomach growling. So they're not
Wow.
going to be focused on learning when they're hungry. And so when I'm watching a budget be passed that are taking these breakfast and lunches away from our students, it just broke my heart, because
Yeah.
we can't kind of depend on, as much as prices are so high and food is so high at the grocery stores, our children are depending on this budget to eat. It
Right.
is their livelihood. And so it really infuriated me that children were waking up hungry and going to bed hungry,
Right.
and then we get to the cutting of snaps. So you can see that there's this endless cycle to criminalize
Yeah.
poor people.
Yeah.
And our students, they get the burnt part of this. They need to be eating. And so watching this budget, watching these cuts just broke my heart on so many different levels, because
Yeah.
it's policies that are just inhumane and not right.
Yeah, as I have had conversations with the superintendents of my district, right? I've gotten to know at least one of them very well, and I will be meeting more of them as time goes on. But they're just so frustrated with the lack of of action, with the lack of care for students. If we say we care about kids and families, why the hell aren't we funding one of the places they are the most amount of time during the school year, right? Why are we not paying our teachers? Why are our teachers having to pay for all these textbooks and school supplies? It's crazy. It's crazy. When you hear a kid's like stomach growling, what what do you do? What have you seen in the school level when there's no funding? What happens in that space?
It's so hard because, of course, they would still have like breakfasts and lunches, but it's like whether they can get to that. Some of them didn't have, transportation. They came to school late, so they might have missed out on breakfast, right?
Yeah.
Again, we talk about students with shifty housing, they can go days and weeks without eating or not can be consistent. And so watching funding be cut, it really, you see it on the level of a human level of your students, what they
Yeah.
are going through, what, the disadvantages of how it's hurting them. And so we learn how this is systematic, right? So I always say, people say, oh, I don't do politics. Well, politics are going to do you. And we see that
Yeah.
in school budget. We see that when a
Yeah.
bus doesn't come. We see that in people trying to afford their electric bills. It's one big cycle that I think that we just have to stand up and say, no, we're not going to take this. We
Right.
have to fight back.
Right. I think it was the a go-go who said politics cares about you, right? Like that is such a reality right now, and and the reality is that politics touches so many spaces. I work in healthcare. You said something earlier that really stuck with me, and I have had a front seat to watching. Um, for those listening who may not know what I do professionally, I'm a hospital chaplain. I do spiritual care within emergency, end of life, ICU situations. That's what I do in my life. And I cannot even count on all my fingers and toes how many black women I have talked to who said, I haven't been listened to, I haven't been cared for. Just in the last couple of months, the state house, the one that you're thinking about running for, the one that I'm running for, just passed a bill to force hospitals, and it will not pass the governor and the Senate, thank God. But it just said, you know what? No more DEI training. No more training on marginalized communities because it's distracting from productivity. You mentioned that you are worried about the maternal health of black women. I mean, even just today, I met with like 3 black women in my hospital who, I just got back from work. I was at work right before this recording, right? Tell me what you see and what you hope to see change in this, in the world of maternal health for black women in the state of Michigan.
So, if you don't know, black women are, I don't have the right percentage right now, but we're more likely to die during childbirth than our white counterparts. And the numbers are astronomical and they're growing. We have seen some stabilization, but that's been due to advocacy. And I've been advocating for black maternal health for many years. And, right now, I would like us to acknowledge Dr. Janelle Green Smith.
Yep.
She is a South Carolina midwife who recently just passed due to complications related to childbirth. So she was also into this work because she knew how important it was for us to advocate for black maternal health, and that still could not save her from its complications. So this just goes to show you how important the implications of black maternal health outcomes are. This is something that is not going away. It's been here. And I love that this is not, even though it is affecting black motherhood in a way, we have so many different allies, both not just in the House, but on the Senate level. When you even think about the Momnivus package, to just think about motherhood as a whole, we really need to shed light on these issues because, again, they're growing. And I think in this climate, it's crazy to think that protections can be rolled back. So when we think about healthcare, and I'm a black woman. Okay, so we're going to the doctor and we're telling them we're in pain. I'm in pain, and often we get accused for wanting just the medication or being drug addicts when we are seriously in pain. And so that is kind of the plight of most black women when they are advocating to their health professionals. Listen, something is not right. We don't feel well. Help us. And some of us aren't listened to until it's too late. Yeah. And so I did want to highlight and bring that up because this is super important and it's not getting any better until we change it.
Right. So according to the CDC, this was before Trump. Let's be super clear about that. Pre-Trump and post-Trump CDC are very different things. The statistics are 50 black women die for every 15 white women. Think about that. That is insane. That is bonkers. Bonkers, bonkers, bonkers. And I've heard it. I've heard it firsthand from so many people who tell me, "Hey, I'm here in the emergency department, and like I've been telling people, I'm at a 10 out of 10. Like they're crying, they're like clutching the bed, and they're not being listened to, right? And they have like flags in their charts that say like potential for violence because they get upset, right? And this does proportionately affect the black community. And and we're trying to roll back these protections. That's insane to me. Insane. Oh my gosh. Okay. A part of this district that you are in, that you're hoping to represent has a large LGBTQ community.
Mhm.
And I would say probably one of the biggest LGBTQ communities in the state of Michigan. Tell me, and I'm a queer person, I'm listening right now, okay? Tell me how you would stand up for queer people in the state of Michigan.
Well, I always believe being in true allyship with a group is to let them advocate for themselves and work directly to make sure that I'm not. I hate when people say, okay, I'm going to give someone a voice or
Hmm.
this is what they want. You have to be, it's all about building up relationships, especially in allyship. And so making legislation that directly impacts that group is working with them and talking with
Yeah.
them and making sure that their needs are being highlighted, that their fears are being eased. Because let's be honest, this is a critical time in a climate where no one is feeling safe, especially those, like you said earlier, with targets on their back. And
Hmm.
I, in order to advocate for that community, we have to highlight their needs and their wants and what they need, and recognizing that these are critical issues that just doesn't affect one community. It affects us all. We
Yeah.
all, I think, unfortunately, that's what's happening is that we can be really divisive and people say, well, you're not me and those are them and they're not with this doesn't exclude me, and we see that with the past election of people saying, oh well, it's not going to affect me. No, it's going to come to you. You I think it is, but it's going
Right.
to come to you. And I think fighting for, these marginalized groups is going to be super important, especially when you are in a community and you're set to represent them.
Yeah. How about trans people? I think one of the things that happens a lot, and of course I'm going to ask this question, right? As a trans woman running for office, I've got to ask the question.
Mhm.
What's going to be different about how you fight for queer people, and where do trans people fit within that? Like, I think some people say, oh, of course we care, but
Mhm.
not everybody goes to bat for trans people because their consultants tell them not to. Where do you stand there?
Yeah, I think they're first off, I know we've met and we've had conversations. You, of
Mm-hmm.
course, being a church kid, I'm being a church kid. I always lead with love.
Yeah.
And leading with love, we have to acknowledge that there are certain fear, right? People say, "Oh, well, I can understand this, but I just don't understand that." And I think it's fear mongering.
Hmm.
And again, we're living in such heightened times when I tell you that people have this kind of anger and confusion and fearfulness. It's a what I call it's a scarcity mindset. It means, oh, if this group of people have these rights, then that means that I won't have enough of my
Right.
rights.
Right.
So I do not believe that. And so I think having these conversations like we are now is that when we are going to bat, and we've seen it in the legislature where some people get really murky. When you see that green and that red votes, you go, okay, who's voting for voting on that? The language can be misconstrued. And so I think by coming together, especially in these communities, we're just gonna have to advocate even more for one
Mm-hmm.
another, and then I do that. I believe in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Really quickly, because I've got other things I want to ask you. Um, the city of Detroit has been under the threat of ICE showing up and disappearing residents. What do you hope to see at the state level to protect immigrants' rights in the city of Detroit and beyond?
There has to be stronger protections, and what I'm loving, especially being a Detroit native, especially with our city council now. We have some new incoming members.
Mm-hmm.
Council member Santiago Romero, she has always been an advocate, of being an immigrant and knowing directly of the things that impact those communities. And what I love is that it's spreading, right? Like being a former educator of in public schools, we're recognizing that our students are they're being broken up from their families. They're being sent away, but we're seeing people who might not be from that community. We're all banding together. We're all there at a protest saying this isn't right and we need to bring our family home because that's what it is. At the end of the day,
Mm.
we look different. We might come from different houses, but we are a family of communities, especially here in Detroit. And I think as we are definitely seeing such this emergence of a harsher and what I call evil ICE presence, we have people who are pushing back. And I
Yeah.
want that's what is encouraging my run for office because I think people they feel like, oh, I don't have any power. And they feel they don't have no hope and they feel powerless. But you have to remember you
Mm-hmm.
elected to represent you. And so this thing that ICE has more control of, there's more us than ICE. You
Yeah.
know, it doesn't feel that way, right? Because we know that there's a power dynamic, but it's us us as communities that have to push back.
Yeah.
And so I want to see legislations to protect, our immigrant families, our immigrant communities, because that's who America is.
Yep.
And I know people are like, what happened to us? What happened to this? We are a nation built by immigrants. And
Yep.
so I think when we start to realize that more and more, that is what pushes us.
Yeah. Okay. So a minute and a half. I'm going to give you a minute and a half. Tell us the top things. Give us the top three. What's your platform? What do you want people when they see your name? They know that you stand for these things.
Okay, let me know
No
when
pressure. You have 1 minute now.
oh, okay. This is super hard. Okay, so I went. Okay, so because I'm a social justice advocate, so I have so many different.
There's so many. Yes, it's hard.
Right. But right now, I don't care who's saying it's a scam. Affordability. People are
Mm-hmm.
struggling to make ends meet. They can't afford groceries. They can't afford to stay in their house. The property taxes.
Right.
They can't move. Like people are spending so much on other things. They're not. We're all going to be on the brink of being unhoused, and so we've got to tackle some affordability there. As an educator, I'm always going to push education. Right. We've seen in the past few months of how dire it is to protect our children and make sure that adequate funding is being given to our students. And then I'm going to go for transportation. I've been a dedicated transportation advocate for many years. And many people say, oh, why? That's normally on the last of the list because let's face it, with the big ugly bill,
Hmm.
it'd be hard to people in rural areas to get to hospitals. Hospitals are going to be shut down. And so how are we getting there, right? So even though I live in the Motor City, there are a lot of people, not just in Detroit, but in Ferndale who don't have cars
Yep.
because car insurance is ridiculous. So that's that affordability piece we're going back to. But I think for us to be connected, not just citywide, but statewide, regionally, we're going to have to make sure that we make sure that there is transit that is being produced that is efficient and effective and affordable.
Oh, so good. Look at you. You did it in a minute, literally in a minute and a half
So happy because I
flat.
can talk about healthcare.
You you nailed it. You nailed it. We'll have you on again to talk about healthcare sometime. Deanne, I hope that you and I get to make laws together.
That would be so fun, wouldn't it?
Really hope that we get that opportunity to do that. Friends, are in the last couple seconds, how can people get connected to you and learn more about you?
Okay, wonderful. So there hasn't been any official announcements just yet, but you can follow me now on my Instagram page is Deanne for Detroit. That's DEANNE, the number for Detroit, DTROIT on Instagram. And I'm also on TikTok, Deanne, DEANNE of Detroit. That's OFDTROIT.
Awesome. Well, friends, thank you for listening to The Michigan Advocate. Go follow Deanne Austin. We are so excited for you thinking about running, and you're gonna do great. Friends, thank you for listening to the show. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.